الله رب الخلق أمدنا بالرزق إذا دعاه الداعي يحقق المساعي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل، وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. وإن شرح of Alfiyah Al-Iraqi, also known as Alfiyah Al-Hadith, also known as At-Tabsirah Wat-Tadhkirah, authored and written by the great scholar Zainuddin Al-Iraqi rahimahullah ta'ala. We're going to carry on where the author rahimahullah, he said, وأهل هذا الشأن قسموا السنن إلى صحيح وضعيف وحسن، فالأول المتصل الإسناد بنقل عدل ضابط الفؤاد عن مثله من غير ما شذوذ وعلة قادحة فتوذ. The Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he goes into أقسام الحديث. The sharh I said that we're going to be relying on is the sharh فتح المغيث بشرح ألفية الحديث by Shamsuddin Sakhawi rahimahullah ta'ala. The word أقسام الحديث, the term أقسام is plural, is جمع, and the singular is قسم. And the word, the term which is النوع والصنف والضرب, all of those words, they have يعني ألفاظ متقاربة, they're close in meaning. And the great adib, the great scholar Abu Hilal al-Askari rahimahullah, he mentions in his kitab al-Furuq al-Lughawiyah, Furuq daqiq jiddan, he mentions a very powerful differences between these terms, النوع والصنف والضرب and أقسام, أما قسم, the differences between them. So go to the kitab Al-Furuq Al-Lughawiyah, page 134 to page 135, and look at what Abu Hilal Al-Askari rahimahullah, he said. The word aqsam is types in English. It will translate as types. And the types that the Shaykh rahimahullah mentions in this book, it's again, as we said before, this book is it's basically based on the kitab written by Ibn Salah rahimahullah ta'ala. And Ibn Salah rahimahullah, he mentions 65 نوعا. He mentions 65 types rahimahullah ta'ala. And the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, here he mentions that when it comes to the sunnah that is attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's one of these three. That's why he says rahimahullah ta'ala, وأهل هذا الشأن قسموا السنن إلى صحيح وضعيف وحسن. يعني what he's trying to say is أهل الشأن, it refers to أهل الحديث, أئمة الحديث, the scholars of hadith. يعني قسموا السنن أي حصروا القسمة في الثلاثة. They restricted the types of the sunan, which is a plural for the word sunnah, into three. They broke it down into three. Now pay attention to this. This تقسيم, it's باعتبارات مختلفة. يعني تقسيمات are generally باعتبارات مختلفة. It depends on how you look at it. If you look at the khabar or the hadith باعتبار وصوله إلينا, it's متواتر and ahad. Okay? If you look at it, تقسيم الخبر أما تقسيم الحديث باعتبار وصوله إلينا, how it reached us, then it's two types. It's going to be متواتر or ahad. And the mutawatir is going to be mutawatir lafzi, mutawatir ma'nawi. And the ahad is going to be divided into these three. The ahad is what's divided into sahih, da'if and hasan. In the mutawatir, it's going to be all sahih because it's past a level of research. But there's another i'tibar of looking at the categorization of hadith, which is bi'tibari man usnida ilayh. Who is this attributed to? Who is this khabar? Who is it attributed to? Then there is, if it's attributed to Allah, it's called hadith qudsi or hadith ilahi. If it's attributed to the Prophet, it's called marfu'. If it's attributed to the Sahabi, it's called mawquf. If it's attributed to the Tabi'i, it's called maqtu'. وَهْلُمَّ جَرَّ. And that's how it is. So the taqseem, it depends on what angle you're looking at. So here, it's the khabar al-ahad من حيث القبول والرد, من حيث مراتبه, sorry, in terms of its levels, it is the ahad is divided into من حيث القبول والرد, sorry, it's من حيث مراتبه is عزيز, مشهور, and غريب. And من حيث and in terms of in terms of accepting and rejecting it, it's Sahih, Da'if, and Hasan. And who is it that basically put it like this? Who is it like who really came and put it in these three taqsimat? This is Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi rahimahullah. And he's in the muqaddimah of his kitab Ma'alim al-Sunan. Al-Imam al-Khattabi rahimahullah ta'ala, Abu Sulaiman, Hamad ibn Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn Khattab al-Khattabi al-Busti. He's a faqih, muhaddith, lughawi, adib, rahimahullah ta'ala. He died the year 388 Hijriya. He has many mu'allafat, rahimahullah ta'ala. They say he was the first person to explain Sahih al-Bukhari. He explained it in his kitab A'lam al-Hadith fi Sharhi Sahih al-Bukhari. He also has another kitab called Ma'alim al-Sunan fi Sharhi al-Hadith allati fi Sunan. And he has a kitab called Al-Uzla. Al-Khattabi rahimahullah ta'ala, great scholar, 4th century scholar, rahimahullah ta'ala. In the muqaddimah of his Ma'alim al-Sunan, he categorizes the hadith into those three, rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentions it. That doesn't mean it wasn't there before him. It was there, but to put it like this, to mention it like this, to organize it like this, he was the first to do it, rahimahullah ta'ala. And this taqsim is called taqsim istiqra'i. Taqsim istiqra'i. يعني the istiqra' can either sometimes be istiqra' which is tab, and sometimes it can be istiqra' which is naqis. Istiqra' which is tam is basically when the categorization is complete. It's complete. And sometimes it can be istiqra' which is naqis, which is deficient. For example, the taqsim which is disputed, which is taqsim istiqra'i, but it's disputed if it can be considered in those three. Like for example, the water. Categorizing the water into three: tahurun, tahirun, and najis. There's a dispute. There are some scholars who just see it tahir and najis. That's it. But there is istiqra' which is يعني taqsim, which is taqsim istiqra' which is tamun. No one could disprove otherwise. An example for that is the kalima in the Arabic language, where Ibn Malik mentions it. كلامنا لفظ مفيد كاستقم واسم وفعل ثم حرف للكلم وحيده كلمة والقول عم وكلمة بها كلام قد يؤم. Categorizing the speech or the word in the Arabic language into three: ism, fi'l, and harf. Those three, that istiqra' is istiqra' tam. No one can disprove otherwise. No person can really disprove this. That's it. Any word in the Arabic language that you look at is either ism, fi'l, or harf. That's it. There's no fourth category that's there, that's missing, that they didn't mention. All of the ulama agreed, and it's ijma'un nuhat. It's the consensus of the grammarians. Are we all together? Example for that is the taqsim of tawheed, the categorization of tawheed, for example. Categorizing the tawheed al-rububiyyah, tawheed al-uluhiyyah, and tawheed al-asma' wa sifat. This is istiqra' which is tam. But you can do the taqsim as from another angle that doesn't go against the meaning of this one. يعني the al-rububiyyah, uluhiyyah, al-asma' wa sifat, and tawheed al-ilmi and tawheed al-amali is the same thing. It's just the cup is half full or the cup is half empty. It's the same thing. Are we all together, brothers? So the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala here, he says, وَأَهْلُ هَذَا الشَّأْنِ, the scholars of this field, يعني أهل العلم, أئمة الحديث, قسموا السنن, they categorized, they divided, and you have to place a shadda on it. You say قسموا بالتشديد. So you say قسموا السنن, and the word sunan is plural. The singular is sunnah. The singular is sunnah. And what does the sunnah mean? The sunnah means whatever is attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ما أضيف إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قول أو فعل أو تقرير أو صفة خلقية أو خلقية. Whatever is attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of speech, action, approval, and also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mannerism and his etiquette, and also the way that Allah created him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the shama'il will fall under the sunan. Are we all together? That is when the word sunnah is synonymous to the word hadith, but it also has a bigger meaning than it. The word sunnah has more and different meaning than that. Ala kullin, the ulama of hadith, they categorize rahimahumullah the sunan into these three types. Even that though Khattabi, an Imam in the 4th century, came and he restricted it to these three, it was there before him. Many other scholars have said it before. Now, here's an ishkal now. It's an issue, which is they categorized it into these three, which is ila sahihin wa da'ifin wa hasan. This is an ishkal now. It's an issue, which is saying that the sunnah is three types. A sunnah which is sahih, a sunnah which is da'if, and a sunnah which is hasan. By the way, the reason why he put da'if before hasan, and he said ila sahihin wa da'ifin wa hasan, and he put that one before that one, is because of the poetry. يعني قدم الضعيف على الحسن لأجل النظم. That's why he did it. But he could have, some of the scholars, they actually tried to, some of the scholars, they reorganized the wording and they said علم الحديث راجع الصنوف إلى صحيح حسن ضعيف. So they structured it correctly by putting sahih and then hasan and da'if. But anyways, the reason why he did it was, as I said, لأجل النظم, because of the nazm of the poetry is why he did it. But there's an issue here. And what is the issue? The issue here is we understand that the Sahih and the Hasan are from the Sunan, meaning they fall under the Hadith which are accepted. But the Hadith which is da'if and it's weak, how can you say this is a Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? How can you attribute it to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? It's a bit concerning, right? Just put Hadith which is da'if, okay, under the Sunan. Okay? So the correct opinion is that the da'if is not part of the sunan. The da'if is not part of the sunan. It shouldn't be added into the sunan. The sunan should only be hadith which is sahih and hadith which is hasan. And the da'if should be taken out of this category. It should not be added into it. But why did he do it, rahimahullah ta'ala? Min babi tatmeem al-qismah. He wanted to just complete off the number. But remember, scholars generally go by the word, the letter, the number 3333. So he wanted to complete the numbering rather than just keeping it 2, 3. Going according to that number. أما لكن حقيقة الأمر, we can't put the da'if and the mawdu' into the qism or the categorization of the sunnah. Okay? I mean, we're going to see later at the ending of the book where Iraqi rahimahullah says شَرُّ الضَّعِيفِ الْخَبَرِ الْمَوْضُوعِ. The worst weak narration is the fabricated one. So can we add the mawdu' into the hadith on the sunan? Okay, we can't. Even though, yes, no doubt, the mawdu' is worse than the da'if. Okay, so it's not correct and it shouldn't be added into there. The Shaykh then, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, فَالْأَوَّلُ. The first is what? What does he mean, فَالْأَوَّلُ? يعني the three that he mentioned. فَالْأَوَّلُ. The first one he mentioned. The first of the three categorization that he mentioned, which one was it? Sahih, right? So now he's going to go into ta'rif al-hadith al-sahih. He's going to go into the definition of what a hadith sahih is and the conditions for it. He says, فَالْأَوَّلُ أي الصحيح. فَالْأَوَّلُ, the first one, which is sahih, is what? اتصال الإسناد, that the chain is connected from the book to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The entire chain is connected. صح؟ اتصال الإسناد. يعني بأن يكون كل راوين, every narrator has taken from what? تحمله عمن فوقه بطريق معتبر. He's taken it from the other person in a correct way. They've heard each other. He's taken it from. He's met this other person. يعني, as we're going to talk later about it, inshallah ta'ala, the طرق التحمل is there. He's heard from him. He's taken from him. He's connected from the person who's narrating this hadith to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's connected. Are we all together? فالأول المتصل الإسنادي. Okay, the fa here, it's تفريعية, that's one قول, or فصيحة. It all depends on how you grammatically look at it. And the word الأول is what? مبتدأ, and the متصل is the خبر. الأول متصل, يعني مبتدأ الخبر. الإسناد here is مضاف إليه, and the word المتصل is a what? It's مقترن بالال, وهي تفيد المعرفة. It benefits us معرفة. What does the word إسناد mean? المتصل الإسناد, this is the question. حافظ ابن حجر رحمه الله تعالى in his kitab نزهة النظر, he mentions to us and he tells us that the word, the إسناد is what? حكاية طريق المتن, or الطريق الموصلة إلى المتن. It basically is حكاية, talking about the path, the route to the matan. The matn is the wording of the hadith, what the Prophet said. So this is the chain, the thing that takes you to what the Prophet said. Or at-tariq al-musila ila al-matni, or the route, the path that reaches you to what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A more clearer wording would be is silsilatul rijal. It's the chain of the narrators, the men who are in there, and the women, doesn't matter. silsilatul rijal الذين يذكرهم المحدث ابتداء من شيخي وانتهاء بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. It is the chain in which the muhaddith, the scholar of hadith, he mentions in that chain, okay, the person who told him from himself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every person. We all together, brothers. This is called a what? Isnad. That's called a what? Isnad. And if the first condition for a hadith to be sahih is al-muttasil al-isnadi, that the chain is connected, what is the opposite? The opposite is what is called al-inqita', which is disconnection. And the inqita', the disconnection, it can happen in two ways. The inqita' can happen in two ways. There is an inqita' which is zahir, apparent. It's an apparent form of disconnection. By the way, we're going to come to this in more details inshallah ta'ala later. The disconnection are two types. A inqita', a disconnection. By the way, there's two reasons why hadith is rejected. One of them is due to the chain, okay? And the other one is due to the narrator. Okay, so now we're not going to go due to the narrator. We're going to come to that later, inshallah ta'ala. We're now going to speak about due to the chain. The chain is that if the chain is disconnected, if the chain is munqati' or there is inqita', disconnection, is two ways. There's an inqita' which is zahir. And inqita' which is zahir is that it's an apparent disconnection. An apparent disconnection is types. The first one is two individuals right next to each other are missing, which is what is called mu'dal. Two individuals right next to each other, together, both of them right next to each other are both missing from the chain. This is called mu'dal. Mu'dal means saqata minhu ithnan ala tawali. They have to be right next to each other. It's mu'allaq, which is a second type of disconnection. A mu'allaq, it basically means حذف من مبدأ إسناده. The beginning of the chain is where is the disconnection. One narrator or more, it can be more if it wants. If it's more, if it's two, okay, right next to each other. So then Bukhari, for example, his teacher's missing, and his teacher's missing. This is called mu'allaq, and it's also called mu'dal because there's two people as well missing. Does that make sense? So, but mu'allaq basically means حذف من مبدأ إسناده, the beginning of the chain is disconnected. So it's like Bukhari's teacher is missing. Okay, one person can be missing or more, it doesn't matter. Or mursal, which is on the opposite side of the chain. A mursal basically means ما رفعه التابعي, is whatever a tabi'i attributes to إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. Okay, so now you've already taken the inqita', which is zahir, apparent. I've mentioned to you mu'dal, I've told you mu'allaq, I've told you mursal, I've told you mu'dal, which is two people. Or it is mu'allaq, or it is mursal. All of these are inqita', which is zahir, apparent. Inqita', disconnection, which is khafiyun, hidden. It's not easy for somebody to see it with their eyes. It requires more looking, and this is what is called a tadlis. And al-irsal al-khafi, a hidden mursal. Okay, what is a tadlis? What is al-irsal al-khafi? Don't worry, it's going to come to us inshallah ta'ala. It's going to come to us later. Bi-idhnillah al-kareem, each one of those ones, tadlis, al-irsal al-khafi, the mu'allaq, the mu'dal, all of them, the Shaykh, he's chaptered it for it, each one. So we're going to talk about how it comes, how it occurs, and how it connects to the books of hadith, inshallah ta'ala. Bi-idhnillah al-kareem. So the first condition is the chain is connected. What is it that can go against the connection of the chain? This, which is inqita', disconnection. What are the types of disconnections? Two types. Zahir and khafi. Zahir is when it's apparent, and khafi is when it's hidden. The second condition of a hadith to be sahih that the Shaykh rahimahullah mentions, rahimahullah ta'ala, is binaqli adilin. Binaqli adilin basically means the narrators who are transmitting these narration are basically individuals who have the characteristics of adl. Al-adlu, what does it mean? The scholars, they define adl to mean malaka تحمل الراوي على ملازمة التقوى والمروءة. In what Shamsuddin al-Sakhawi mentions in his kitab here, فتح المغيث بشرح ألفية الحديث. He mentions it. He says that the term عدل, it means it is malaka. What is the difference between a malaka and a sifa? You have to know this. A malaka is when a sifa is rasikha. What does that mean? For example, somebody has an attribute. That's called a sifa. Malaka is when that sifa becomes something rooted in that person. It becomes part and parcel of him. Because a sifa is shay which is tari, right? Because there's a that, there's a sifa, and there's a malaka. A sifa is a description, an attribute that you have. Like a malaka is when that sifa becomes rasikha, rooted in you. Whereas a sifa can come and go. هي التي تطلع وتزول بسرعة. It can come and it can go. Does that make sense? I can be someone whose characteristics is to be very happy and joyful, and maybe a while later, I lose that. I don't have it anymore. I'm a very angry, it can go, comes and goes, right? Lakin a malaka is when that sifa becomes rasikha. Rasikha means strong and rooted inside the person, okay? And it becomes, it's not detached from the person. Okay, it's a hay'a rasikha, it's a sifa rasikha. The scholars all call it that. That's what malaka means. Does that make sense? Okay. So basically, this individual, malaka, تحمل الراوي على ملازمة التقوى والمروءة. He has a malaka, which is sifa rasikha, تحمل الراوي, which makes the narrator to stick with التقوى والمروءة. Two terms he mentioned, taqwa and al-muru'ah. What is taqwa? Taqwa simply means fi'lul ma'murat wa ijtinabul manhiyat. Simple as. That's what it really means. It's to do what Allah has commanded you to do and to stay away from what Allah has prohibited you from. And al-muru'ah, which is the second thing that Shaykh mentions, which is ala mulazamati taqwa wal muru'ah. Al-muru'ah is what? Muru'ah basically is mura'atul adab allati yata'arafu alayha an-nas. People have customs and things that they consider to be good. مما يحسن ويجمل الاتصاف بها وإن لم يرد بها نص. There's no text to support this thing, but it's something when the people look at it, it's like, this is good. I'll give you an example. For example, me, if I was to come today here and I was to wear a vest, okay, I was to wear a vest and I wore a purple vest or a green vest, and I sat here and I wore a cap and I sat. Now, you won't find any evidence to say that's haram. صح? You won't find any evidence that says the cap that you're wearing is haram or the vest that you're wearing, Sheikh, is haram. No, it's actually not haram. But that's not muru'ah. That's not muru'ah. I'm just trying to simplify the concept of what muru'ah means. But muru'ah changes from time to time. And the changing is not looked at as in the customs of the non-Muslims. It's looked at amongst the customs of the Muslims. It's mura'atul adab التي يتعارف عليها الناس, يعني the Muslims. Back at the time of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah and others, eating and drinking while you're walking on the street was considered to be what? Khawarim al-muru'ah. It was considered to be khawarim al-muru'ah. Khawarim al-muru'ah means something that damages your integrity, your muru'ah. But there's no text for it. There's no qala Allah and qala Rasul for this issue. But it's just when the people look, it's really not nice. For example, spreading your legs at your teacher. Like just your legs right in front of him like that. Khawarim al-muru'ah. Khawarim al-muru'ah. And then the second thing that the person doesn't come with is khawarim al-muru'ah. That individual is adl. He's got the characteristics of adala. He's called adl. His transmission of narrations is accepted. That's the second condition for the hadith to be sahih. The third condition for the hadith to be sahih is dabit. A dabit, it's basically what? First of all, there has to be adala, and on top of that, there has to be dabt. Dabt in English translates as precision. Here it means he is strong in terms of memory. It means al-hifdhu bihazmin. He's got strong memory, okay? From when until when? He has memorization, he's got it. بحيث يتمكن من أدائه. He can give this narration when? متى شاء, whenever he wants to. It's on the tip of his tongue. He's memorized it. He has strong memory. Whenever he needs the narration, straight away he can mention it. That's called dabt. The scholars, they mention the dabt is two types. They give two types of dabt, which is memory or precision. The first one is dabt, which is sadr, in terms of his chest. Dabt, which basically means sadr. Whenever he wants to, he can read it from memory, from his chest. He's got it in his mind, in his heart. He needs it, he can narrate it. Imma bil lafzi, in terms of wording, or bil ma'na, or in terms of meaning. And there's more conditions for when he narrates it based on meaning. This is important to understand this. In terms of wordings, that's no problem, inshallah ta'ala. But if he wants to narrate based on meaning, okay, there are conditions that the scholars mention, and we'll come to that later, inshallah ta'ala, when you want to do a riwayat bil ma'na, narrating a hadith based on meaning. So you don't know the wording, but you remember the meaning, and you want to give the gist of it. This one, there's conditions that the scholars stipulate. But that's also considered dabtul sadri. There are some scholars who don't allow it, don't accept it, and there are those who do. Okay. The second type of precision or memory is dabtul kitab. The person has preserved this hadith in their book. They've got a book, and that's where they've written these narrations. Scholars, they mention again, for us to consider the narrations from those books, there also has to be some condition. They mention Siyanatul Rawi li kitabihi, that the narrator protects his book منذ أن سمع, from the time he heard it. في وصححه إلى أن يؤدي منه. The book is preserved, protected. This narrator, he's written the hadith from the sheikh that he heard it from, right? This narrator protects his book from the time he heard from his teacher. Okay? He corrects his book. He keeps it preserved and protected and corrected. Okay? Until he narrates. This is called dabtul kitab. If there is like confusion and he's confused with his own book, this is a problem. The Shaykh then says, rahimahullah ta'ala, an mithlihi. Al-Iraqi, he says, an mithlihi. Meaning, an mithlihi here means, يعني في العدالة والضبط. Someone like him in terms of memory and integrity. Adala we spoke about, and dabt. So it's like the whole entire chain, everybody has what? Adala and dabt, okay? Every single person in that chain has to be udul and dabit, has integrity, and he's also got precision, okay? But the Shaykh didn't have to mention this an mithli. He already mentioned ittisal al-sanad and the connection of the chain. But this is, inshallah ta'ala, the reason he mentioned it, rahimahullah ta'ala, is mujarrad tawdih, just to clarify even more. And mithli here is basically ittisal al-sanad, that the chain is connected, and etc. Min ghayri, the Shaykh then says, ma shudud, without them being shudud. Now, we have to understand that the shurut of sahih, there's two types. The shurut of hadith sahih, there's shurut known as shurut wujudiyah, and there's shurut known as shurut adamiyah. The Shaykh finished mentioning the three shurut known as shurut wujudiyah, meaning they have to be there. They should be found. Okay, that's called shurut wujudiyah. They need to be present for the hadith to be sahih. Okay, if they're not there, the hadith is not going to be considered sahih. The last two from the five conditions, the last two, they're called shurut adamiyah, meaning they should not be there. They should be absent. The first of those last two is what? Shudud. Shudud, basically, the scholars differed. If you look at the kalam of the mutaqaddimin and the kalam of the mutaakhirin, there is discrepancies, differences, slight differences. But if you look at the mutaakhirin, those who came later, they gave the definition that the shadh is ما يخالف فيه الثقة من هو أوثق منه. They said that it's a mukhalafa. It's basically an opposition from a reliable person. But who's he going against? من هو أوثق منه, someone who's more precise and more reliable than him. Yani, a person who's thiqah, whose narrations we would have accepted, has now opposed someone who's greater than him. So they give the scholars, they mention two mukhalafa if he does, and the thiqah, if he does mukhalafa, if he opposes man huwa awthaqu minhu, someone who has a higher reliability and integrity and memory than him, or if he opposes those who are more than him in number. This is called shadh. So we look at number. So he goes against a large quantity of scholars of hadith who are all strong, or he goes against and he opposes and he is going against someone who is more greater than him. Okay? And we're going to see that inshallah ta'ala when Al-Iraqi mentions it, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the line 161, he will mention it. وَذُو الشُّذُوذِ مَا يُخَالِفْ ثِقَةً فِيهِ الْمَلَا فَالشَّافِعِيُّ حَقَّقَهُ. We're going to see that inshallah ta'ala, Iraqi when he mentions it, rahimahullah ta'ala. The concept of shudud, ulama al-hadith are the ones who consider it. Scholars of fiqh and usul, they don't take these two, the last two that we're mentioning, which is shudud and illah. For them, it's not important for the hadith to be sahih. يعني usuliyin and the fuqaha, they take the hadith if it's muttasilul isnad, okay, the chain is connected, the narrators have dabt and they have adala, they take it. يعني illah, they don't care about this. They don't give consideration. And Al-Imam Ibn Daqiq al-Eid rahimahullah ta'ala mentions, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he mentions it in his kitab Al-Iqtiran. He mentions it rahimahullah ta'ala في بيان الاقتراح, في بيان الاصطلاح. He mentions it rahimahullah ta'ala in that book. And also Ibn Al-Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, who basically worked on that book, organized it, summarized it, added a little bit of things onto it, where he called it Al-Muqidha. Dhahabi also mentions this, that the usuliyin and the fuqaha, shudud is not part of the discussion for them. Shudud, according to the fuqaha and the usuliyin, is okay. Look what Suyuti, for example, says. He says, فمجرد مخالفة أحد رواته لمن هو أوثق منه أو أكثر عددا لا يستلزم الضعف, he says, بل يكون من باب الصحيح وأصح. عجيب. Zarkashi, what does he say? الشاذ منه الصحيح ومنه الضعيف ومنه الحسن. Zarkashi says that. So there is the fuqaha on one side and the usuliyin, and we have the scholars of hadith and what they mention and what they consider and what they, and when it comes to these issues, my brothers and sisters, who do we go back to? Whose words should we take? Whose opinions should we take into consideration? Ahlul Shan. Every field we go to the people of the field. We don't ask we don't ask other people about their opinion regarding those issues. Okay? So, and again, the issue of shudud, it's going to come to us later, bi'idhnillahi al-kareem. The final and last condition that the Shaykh rahimahullah mentions for the hadith to be sahih, which is intifa'ul illah. Intifa'ul illah, which is there has to be the absence. Again, this is a shartun adami. I told you this before. The shurut al-wujudi, we spoke about it. Now we're going to go into shurut, which is adami. Illa qadiha, it's defect that harms the narration. And the illa, the scholars, they call it, they say it's a sababun khafiyun ghamidun yaqdahu fi sihhat al-khabar الذي ظاهره السلامة الذي ظاهره السلامة منها. عجيب. That it's a hidden reason. Hidden. خفي غامض يقدح. It harms في صحة الخبر. It harms the authenticity of the hadith. Zahir of the hadith, when you look at the hadith from the apparent, it's so connected. It is, mashallah, يعني the narrators are udul, the dabt, the salam, يعني اتصال السند, all of that is there. From the zahir, it looks so good. But in reality, what is it? It's got a hidden defect. This is called ilal, the chapter of ilal. The person who speaks about this is a'immatul hadith. Not even all the scholars who know hadith. There are scholars who are known to be min ahl al-ilal. They know the hidden defects, like Abu Hatim al-Razi, okay, like Abu Zur'at al-Razi, like Al-Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, like Al-Imam Ali ibn al-Madini, like Al-Imam al-Nasa'i rahimahullah ta'ala, like Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, and other great scholars who are like this. They mastered, they knew it. Again, just like what I said about shudud, Ibn Daqiq mentions that ishtirat intifa' al-illa, the fuqaha don't give that importance to that. Yani, they accept, yani they take every hadith, even if it's got hidden defect. And again, who do we take in this issue? This is where we take the ulama al-hadith. You find Abi Hamid al-Ghazali, you find Fakhruddin al-Razi, you find Abu Ma'ali al-Juwayni, who their knowledge of hadith is very little, very little. They will be considered to be fuqaha. okay, you'll just see, accept the hadiths, just taking it on, okay? And you might even find some people transmitting the kalam of who? Abu Hamid al-Ghazali fi ulum al-hadith. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala says, بِضَاعَتِي فِي الْحَدِيثِ مُزْجَاتٍ. I'm a muzjah. My knowledge in hadith, my ability, my knowledge in hadith, he said, is very weak. He himself said that, rahimahullah ta'ala. It's not something that was said on his behalf. He himself says that. When it comes to hadith, I'm not a person who knows that much about it. So when it comes to hadith, mas'alatul ilal, and things like that, it's not taken to everybody. It's taken to a'immatul sha'ni. And inshallah ta'ala, the types of ilal, how the illah works, and etc. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about it. ولذلك subhanallah, the great scholar, Imam Abu Abdulrahman Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i, has a kitab called Ahadith Mu'alla Zahiruha as-Sihha. Ahadith which are what? Have illah in it. But from the zahir, when you look at it, it's what? Fine, there's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it. That book, wallahi, when I remember I got it, I started to look at all the chains, try to check it. It's so true. When you look at the hadith, you'll say, and then Imam Shaykh Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i rahimahullah ta'ala mentions the illah. It's amazing. And wallah, he was a scholar when it came to illah. He knew it very well. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Abdurrahman al-Muallimi, also amazing when it came to illah hadith. He knew it very well. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, the same thing. Brothers and sisters, what we've taken today is shurut al-khamsa, the 5 conditions of hadith to be sahih. The first one we said is ittisal al-sanad. The second thing we mentioned is adalatul ruwat, which is that the narrators, they have integrity. And we spoke about what adala meant. Tamam al-dabt. Tamam al-dabt basically means complete precision. Hadith which is sahih has to have tamam al-dabt. There can't be deficiency in precision. The fourth one is intifa'u shudud, the absence of shudud. Shudud is opposition. And the fifth condition was intifa'u al-illa al-qadiha, that there is absence of illa which is qadiha. As for this condition that some of the scholars add to it, where is the numbers have to be large, yani it has to, yani there has to be more than one person who narrates it, and it has to be, yani for the hadith to be sahih, it has to be at least 2 people. This kalam is weak, even though it seems to be the statement of Imam al-Hakim al-Naysaburi and Ibn al-Arabi and al-Kirmani, who's a sharih of Bukhari. They do say, they kind of give this impression that the hadith, for it to be sahih, they add an additional thing to it, which is that it has to be 2 or more. And Sana'ani refutes them in his kitab Qasab al-Sukar, when he says وَلَيْسَ شَرْطًا لِلصَّحِيحِ فَعْلَمِ وَقَدْ رُمِي مَنْ قَالَ بِالتَّوَهُمِ. Some of the nusakh, they say وَلَيْسَ شَرْطًا لِلصَّحِيحِ فَعْلَمِ وَقِيلَ شَرْطٌ وَهُوَ قَوْلُ الْحَاكِمِ. And you know, it's very profound. Even Kirmani, he's a sharih of Sahih Bukhari, right? He mentions, subhanallah, which is fascinating. Kirmani's he's an explanation on Sahih Bukhari. You find Ibn Hajar transmit from him a lot. You will see that Kirmani mentioning that the shart of Imam al-Bukhari is أَلَّا يَرْوِي الْحَدِيثَ الَّذِي يَتَفَرَّدُ بِهِ رَاوِيهِ. That Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, the narrators that he basically narrates from, or the hadith that he narrates from the condition of Bukhari, is that it can't be tafarrud, it can't be one person. It has to be more than one. So it's 2 or more. It's fascinating because the first hadith that Bukhari brings in his Sahih is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. It's fascinating. And the last hadith that he mentions, kalimatani, is also a hadith which is ahad. Okay, so it's tafarrud. So that inshallah ta'ala brings us to the ending of the part of the conditions for sahih, and what is a hadith which is sahih. We're going to, inshallah ta'ala, in our next lesson, we're going to go into the Shaykh talking about when the hadith is the asanid which are sahihah. يعني وبالصحيح والضعيف قاصدوا في ظاهر إلا القطع والمعتمد إمساكنا عن حكمنا على سند بأنه أصح مطلقا وقد قضى به قوم فقيل مالك عن نافع بما رواه الناسك مولاه واختر حيث عنه يسند الشافعي قلت عنه أحمد. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go into that inshallah ta'ala, which is the hadith which is sahih. Can we say that this chain is the best chain in terms of authenticity? And if we do say that, what are we basing it on? We're going to look at that inshallah ta'ala, the concept known as Asahul Asanid. Al-Asanid, we're going to look at that next lesson inshallah ta'ala. Anything I've said that was wrong or incorrect is from me and shaitan, and Allah and His Messenger are both free from it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.